Exactly 60 years ago, the Spring Reverb tank or pan, as we know it today, was created. This invention would dramatically affect the tone of entire generations of electric guitarists and the music styles of the following decades. In this episode, we celebrate this anniversary and grab the opportunity to sharpen our knowledge on the Spring Reverb effect under a technical, historical, and cultural point of view. In particular, we are focusing our attention on the Fender 6G15 Spring Reverb Unit of the early 1960s. This legendary piece of gear is revered as one of the most iconic guitar effects ever produced. I'm just about to show you two great vintage original samples. Speaking of Spring Reverb tank, in the time of sophisticated audio post-production plugins, might seem anachronistic. In fact, the 60 years old electromechanical device may appear primitive or obsolete compared to today's technology. In essence, when an audio signal enters the tank, a mechanical transducer transmits vibrations to a spring. On the other end of the spring, an output transducer or pickup reconverts these vibrations into sound, resulting physically delayed with regard to the input signal. In addition, vibrations bounce back and forth between the ends, emulating the multiple reflections of natural room acoustics. Generally, a tank uses a set of 2 or 3 transmission springs to mimic the effect of different surfaces in a real ambience while creating a richer and more harmonic frequency response. A spring reverb effect also employs preamplification, which warms up the overall tone, adding some extra articulation and grain. Actually, spring reverb sounds quite unnatural compared to sophisticated digital effects. Nevertheless, its characteristic drip sound became a classic in electric guitar amplification. The distinctive halo generated by the spring reverb became the trademark of many music styles, including surf, dub reggae, blues, and rock and roll. Used and abused in countless movie soundtracks, it still sounds too cool and vital to send for retirement. In 1925, the new Bell Telephone Laboratories Incorporated hired a big number of scientists and engineers. The company is considered the greatest scientific laboratory of all times, earning the nickname of the Idea Factory. While the earliest innovations of this lab were aimed to provide telephone call clarity, in the 1930s they conceived an obscure invention heading in the opposite direction. They patented a device to mimic the far reverberated voices heard in the long-distance telephone calls of the time.
Long distance, Mr. Frank Renard, Murphy, Idaho, Murphy 761.
This electromechanical device was 4 feet or 1.2 meters tall and employed springs, oil, and wire. What use did they have for it in the 1930s, and why the Bell Labs invested their resources on such instrument? I have no idea. That's possible food for conspiracy theories. However, many important inventions of humanity consist in finding new applications of available technologies or knowledge. In mid to late 1930s, many people who bought a Hammond organ thought that they would get the sound of a pipe organ in a cathedral. Eventually, they would set up the instrument in their living room, among furniture, draperies and carpets, and be disappointed with a frustrating dry sound. Lawrence Hammond of Illinois in 1939 came up with a solution. He adopted the reverberation device created by Bell Labs to simulate the natural ambience reverb his customers were expecting and to fit into the big speakers cabinet of his organs. By 1960, the external speakers cabinets were reduced in size or even became unnecessary. The Hammond Organ Company engineer Alan Young was assigned with the task of developing a more compact reverb unit. Young was also a musician and liked to spend extra time working on the most captivating projects. He created a prototype that he could easily carry home in his briefcase. Eventually, he came up with what became known as the Type 4 Spring Reverb pan or tank. Young's creation was finally responding to a long demand of musicians. Filling the space between notes, it could thicken the sound, recreating the feeling of a larger space like a concert hall or music venue, even in a dry room sound. On the other hand, artificial reverberation made its way into recording studios. The producer Bill Putnam Sr. in 1947 had the idea to put a speaker and a microphone in the studio's bathroom, turning it into a primitive echo chamber. With the development of more sophisticated techniques, by the early 60s, the reverberation sound effect had become popular in music production. The Ampeg engineer Jess Oliver in 1961 modified the Ampeg Rocket amplifier, adding a circuit for the Hammond's Spring Reverb pan. This new version, baptized Reverb Rocket R12, is credited as the first guitar amplifier to integrate reverb. Gibson, Magnatone, Danelectro and Premier weren't far behind, and also started to adopt the Hammond reverb as a built-in feature of their guitar amplifiers. Leo Fender opted for a separate, standalone unit, also introduced in 1961, still based on the Type 4 Spring Reverb pan from Hammond. The original instruction manual advertised that it was intended for guitar, accordion, microphone, and even phonograph and tape-recorded program material. Fender amplifiers did not incorporate onboard reverb until 1963. An original Fender 6G15 reverb unit from the early 1960s represents in the imagery of guitar players, collectors, and enthusiasts the spring reverb effect by definition. Thanks to my inseparable guitar mate Giacomo Bagorda, longtime expert and collector, I'm excited to have here two original Fender Reverb units. This one is from the first production year and it's in excellent conditions. It carries the serial number R00429 and the manufacturing date code KJ stamped on the tube chart, which points to October 1961. This unit is hence one of the first 500 ever produced. Andrea Spallone, the previous owner, told me that it belonged to a French collector and it was pictured for the book Fender Amps: The First 50 Years. Initially, the unit was released in brown vinyl Tolex covering, which was the standard in those years, and in the rare version with rough blonde covering. The apparel of the 6G15 followed the changes in design of the Fender amp line. The increasing demand of reverb pans led Hammond to relocate the production to their subsidiary company Gibbs Manufacturing in Wisconsin. The 6G15 mounted Gibbs pans with 1122 code. The 1963 Reverb, which we are going to see in the next few episodes, was the first Fender amplifier with onboard reverb. By 1966, most models followed. The tube unit was discontinued, replaced by the less desirable and sought after solid-state version FR1000. The production of pans passed from Gibbs to Accutronics in Illinois, still a division of Hammond Organs. A rare short-lived reissue with silver face cosmetics appeared in 1976 with the name of Tube Reverb. Fender reissued the original 6G15 design in 1994. It was available in 4 different coverings, including a version in 50s tweed, taking creative liberty over historical accuracy, until it eventually fell out of production in 2016. This is an original vintage 6G15 from 1963, acquired from my friend Tommaso, who used it with his surf band Los Drigos. It has definitely seen some action. 2 former owners etched on the panel their social security or driving license numbers, as used by American musicians to keep track of their equipment in unfortunate case of theft or loss. If you should have any information about the early history of this unit, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below. The power transformer and many original capacitors have been replaced through the years. A few components have survived, including, surprisingly, what appears to be the original RCA power tube. Sadly, the original pan went lost or destroyed, and the wrong pan came in its place. I managed to find a correct Gibbs tank from the 60s to restore the unit to its original specs. A mechanical revision of pan mounting and locking was also necessary. During 1963, Fender switched to the more reliable strap handles, as used on blackface amplifiers. This unit still comes with the original 50s style brown faux leather handle, which means that it was produced early that year. In fact, one of the transformers is dated April 1962. The original handle was wisely stored and replaced for a safer transportation. I put on a reproduction for a proper look. Vintage-style braided wire completed the revision. In short, the input signal is split in 2 parallel paths, an affected wet signal and a direct dry signal. The dry signal is still amplified through 1/2 of the 12AX7 preamp tube. The dwell adjusts the amount of wet signal sent to the drive circuit and pan. A recovery circuit reamplifies the wet signal out from the pan with the other half of the 12AX7. The wet signal then reaches the tone control, which only affects the reverb output sound. Both paths converge to the mixer control, adjusting the dry to wet signal ratio sent to the output. A 12AT7 preamp tube amplifies the wet signal before the reverb driver transformer, powered by a 6K6 tube. The reissue from the 70s has an output buffer circuit with one more preamp tube. Newer reissues have a printed circuit board as opposed to the hardwired circuit of the original ones, and have a 6V6 power tube instead of the now discontinued 6K6. The most relevant testimonial of the Brown Tolex Fender 6G15 Reverb Unit from the early 60s is without a doubt the king of surf guitar, Dick Dale. Reportedly, Dale was not satisfied with his singing and wanted to try reverb to support his vocals. Eventually, he ended up plugging his Stratocaster into the reverb unit and created the trademark sound of surf music. Mystery Lou, released in 1962 by Dick Dale and the Deltones, is considered the archetype of the sound of Fender Reverb Unit when cranked up. Quentin Tarantino made the track widely popular 31 years later, using it as the main theme for the cult movie Pulp Fiction. Interestingly, for his live shows, Dale used to suspend his reverb unit, hanging it by a rope from the ceiling or stage rafters, to keep it isolated from vibrations and prevent crashes or resonance issues. Neil Young, wanting to jump on stage while keeping his unit safe from spring rattles, adopts an even more radical or punk solution. He drills a hole in the stage and hangs the spring tank separately to a microphone stand placed directly on the floor of the building, isolated from the stage. Countless other classic recordings of the widest variety of genres would have not sounded the same without the contribute of spring reverb, either prominent or more subtle. Bottom line, in the 21st century, we have reliable, realistic, and flexible digital pedals. Do we really need in our setup this unnatural sounding, boingy metal spring tank, adding background hiss and crashing like thunder when accidentally hit or shaken? If you're watching the BTR channel, you probably already know my answer. If you love the character of vintage style spring reverb, nothing will beat the real deal. Also, don't think in clichés, the spring reverb is not just for surf music. Its use is only limited by your imagination. In my setup, I would never do without a subtle and warm halo of spring reverb. This doesn't mean that I'm dragging around a vintage tube Fender Reverb Unit to my shows. I would only recommend to gig with a Fender tube unit if the spring reverb is really a prominent component of your sound or central element of your setup. In most cases, I see no point in committing to this delicate, expansive piece of gear, which is tricky to set up and heavy and bulky to transport like a small amp head. There are some great alternatives. You can get excellent, real deal vintage style spring reverb in a more convenient and practical way. We are going to see that in the next episode. We have some really exciting stuff going on. Don't miss it. Your feedback and comments are the only fuel of the BTR channel. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to keep in touch. Feel free to join the Facebook group Bob Stone Review and visit our Instagram profile.